afternoon. This is Kaja Bryx, Racjonalista.tv. My guest today is Diego Fontanive, board director of Atheist Alliance International and the founder of End of Fear Project. Hi Diego, how are you?
I'm fine. We prefer to call it EOF Project now because yes, it stands for End of Fear, but End of Fear is a little bit too bombastic.
So you think it's actually scaring people?
No. But you know, if we say End of Fear, it can be, you know, it can allow many biased interpretation. We do have natural fears, which are there because they have to be there. For instance, fear of a snake is important. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect myself or to escape. But you know, people they easily rely to like some idea of salvation or like a quick fix and all this sort of stuff. And also, unfortunately, we attracted many new age people because of this slogan "End of Fear." So we don't quite like to call the project "End of Fear" anymore. It stands for that, but we are more talking about irrational fears.
Okay, so people actually interpret it as you're gonna save them as a salvation from fear, yes? Which is quite the opposite. Okay. Yes. Well, so can you actually tell us a bit about this project?
Yes, the project came into being as an idea probably maybe 10 years ago, and it was not an idea of salvation at all. The basic point of the project is the comprehension that most of our problems and most of our irrational fears come from the belief systems we have, and comes from the ideology or ideology we join. This is an historical problem, is a present problem, and it is also a personal psychological problem. So the project was and is mainly an attempt to comprehend what we accept epistemically in terms of pretty much everything, in terms of what we think we are, in terms of the mindset we carry around without questioning them most of the time, the belief we adopt. And to say it in a very simple way, the project is an attempt to comprehend through critical thinking our belief systems without filtering those belief systems and the comprehension through another belief system. Let me explain in a little bit more simple way. We do not give people another belief or another ism in order to understand the structure of their believing. Even atheism, for example. I am the board director of these atheist organizations, which is international, it is quite like well known. But personally, I'm not happy to consider myself an atheist because obviously I don't believe in any deity, I don't believe in any God. But atheism is often not only a classification to make it clear that people don't believe in any divine supreme intelligence, but atheism is also often like a shelter that works pretty much like a meme, where people like to belong, but without engaging a proper critical thinking. For example, for instance, there are atheists that are also nationalistic. So to be nationalistic is another form of following an ideology. And or there are atheists that believe in spiritual experiences. Which is another form of like magical thinking that has no critical analysis. So this is why I personally don't like to categorize myself in a specific group. I think that atheism is a good starting point because it promotes secularism. and an education without the influence of religious thinking, it is okay, but I don't think that is enough. I don't think it is enough at all, actually, because it doesn't involve much critical thinking, it doesn't involve much meta-cognition. There is not really much a comprehension of memetic thinking, the power of memes. And then the problem, which is also what I will introduce in at the Congress about skepticism. Skepticism is obviously good, but skepticism often can really become a memeplex, which is a complex of memes, where people repeat always over and over the same stuff, like we don't have evidence for this, we don't have evidence for that, yes, which is okay, but it's not really enough to comprehend, for instance, why people engage a belief system without caring about the analysis of the validity of the premises behind that belief system. For example, I lived in Bali 5 years, and I know you went to Bali, I saw some pictures. And, well, anthropologically is beautiful, because, you know, the temples, the ceremonies, and all this sort of stuff. But I lived in Ubud, I'm sure you know where Ubud is the cultural capital of Bali, the center. And there are plenty of Western people, New Age people, that decide to visit or even to live there, and to participate to the most crazy workshops or retreats. Like, I've seen the most like irrational things, like the challenging the healing power of the unicorns, all this sort of stuff. So it's fascinating to observe how these people are following something and they like so much to be a part of a memeplex, because they are all together, they are a part of something, they really feel a part of something. And they don't inquire at all about the premises behind their conclusions about healing, about spiritual salvation. And the surface of it looks a little bit funny, but if we really want to study deeper, this matter is not funny at all, because it creates serious mental disorders. For example, I've seen couples that they were willing to bring their children to perform some meditation. 2-year-old boy doing colonoscopy every week, eating raw food, vegan food, and you know, in Bali you cannot inform the authorities because nobody cares. So it's quite bad. It's quite bad. And I'm mentioning Bali because Bali is a powerful example of how a memeplex works. Then the problem is that we have especially in our Western cultures, we have a memeplex that are much more hidden, so we don't quite see them. Goodness, for example, is a powerful memeplex. Freedom of religion is a powerful memeplex. We think that is good, but we do not analyze that freedom of religion implies freedom of indoctrination, because a religion cannot exist without the process of, you know, creating a proselytism and therefore indoctrinating the children. So the project was born with the intention to study how can we understand the structure of our beliefs without engaging in other belief systems, which is incredibly hard. And there are many attempts there. For instance, I'm not quite okay with neuro-linguistic reprogramming of the brain, or I believe this is the way they call it, because it's too tricky, and just like the definition suggests, is often like deprogramming a person's mind by installing another program, and which is pretty much another belief, or all this stuff about, you know, self healing or self help they call it. It is a problem because it's very difficult to function without engaging a certain structure of beliefs, which could be similar to Taoism or Buddhism or some kind of disciplines coming from the East. So The project was initially more an initiative to see if this is possible, or maybe if we were just deluded. And then we try to engage people, working with people. There is a course about critical thinking and meta-cognition in a platform that belongs to Cambridge Institute. And so we tried different activities, including like a documentary film we are making that is pretty much about these topics. We, according with our data, according with our results, we saw that is incredibly hard, but it's not impossible. And now the next stage of the project is to create something in the field of education. So trying to propose programs in the especially high school and universities that are based on this. I don't want to call it methodologies, but for a lack of better words, we mainly combine critical thinking and meta-cognition, and also we have our own way to do that. And we test. We are trying to collect the data. We try to remain the most unbiased we can. And yes, we can see some results from it. And also we can see that there are really many people who really want this. Probably, I believe, because nowadays we are overwhelmed by an overload of information that, especially coming from the internet. And I've seen many proposals that look like a critical thinking, but then when you subscribe, then you realize they are kind of spiritual or motivational or new age alike, and it's pretty much about healing, not really about understanding. It's mainly about healing. They don't know, those people don't even know what they really want to hear. And I came across many of them in Bali. I know you laugh, but it could be very, very, very serious.
I know it can be really serious, and I think probably an even better example would be India, where I know that you also lived, and I lived in India also for over a year, and I've seen some totally crazy people there. So people from Europe or US doing things that no Indian person would have done, like walking barefoot in the most dirty places for just showing the devotion or whatever, I don't know, or doing things really, really nasty for their health, which even very religious Hindus from India, they don't do them. So I know it can really lead, and especially when they do this to children, because they believe it's good for their children to force them to eat like raw vegan food, etc. This is really horrible. So I totally understand what you're talking about.
Yes.
I totally understand what you're talking about.
I lived in India too. I lived in Kerala, and I've seen many Western people that but India is more harsh than Bali. Bali is more like glamour spirituality, if we like to use this definition. India is very harsh, and I've seen these Western people desperately trying to become a Hindu or sadhus, but in their own way. That was actually, like you said, even worse than the what Hindu people do in India. And this again, if we want to talk about mimiplexes, this desperate attempt to find out something that can somehow emancipate their minds from their confusion, rather than analyzing their confusion and comprehending if it is, a clinical problem, a neurological problem, or if it is all about like a bad way to use their own psychology. And the problem is that we have been educated to stick to conclusions most of the time. We lack of an education that can offer us the capability to think critically about the premises behind the conclusion in which we believe. Let me be clear. If I think that love is all we need, if I think that love is the solution for everything, which is a big meme, especially thanks to the generation of the 60s, the hippie revolution, the Beatles, all this sort of stuff. But even nowadays, with spirituality, New Age, and even the music industry promotes greatly this stuff, and movies and so on. So, love as the ultimate solution is a powerful meme. So, if I have this conclusion in mind that the solution for everything is love, and all we need is love, I am in trouble. I have a big problem, because if I analyze the premises of this conclusion, I can probably find out that wherever there is love, there is also conflict. For instance, love for my country, and then I'm ready to fight or to discriminate the people who belong to another country. Love for my flag, love for my God, love for my think positive mentality. It's very interesting, by the way, that any time we try to challenge people that believe in think positive life, only focus on positive things, the answer is pretty much always the same. They ask us, why are you upset? But we say, but I'm not upset. I'm just trying to establish a proper debate and a critical analysis of your beliefs, because also because I believe that it's very bad to deliberately ignore negative things. It can only give nothing but further fuel to the problems of the world. And by the way, it's very childish. So they usually react with ad hominem fallacies. So they attack the speaker, and they refuse to approach the arguments the speaker proposes. Or eventually, many people nowadays they debate through on social medias. They debate through sending videos. So you ask something, they send you back 10 hours videos about the flat earth theory or stuff like that. So you see, the problem, what we're trying to do, aside the working with people personally, and also through courses, and also through other media like documentary films and other things, we are trying to enter the field of education, proposing what I call meta-memetic thinking, which is what I'm going to explain better at the Congress. In a very short way, meta-memetic thinking is talking about and discussing about and thinking about the memes we have, finding the hidden memes we adopt, everything that's behind our epistemic acceptances, and trying to develop, for a lack of a better word, an antivirus against this. I like a lot that Richard Dawkins called the memes viruses in the mind. So, well, and they are very tangible. We are not talking about some sort of philosophy. The memes are very real, and the results they create are very problematic. ISIS, for example, is a super powerful meme. Goodness is a powerful meme, and often is not really that good, because it implies, again, freedom of religion, for example, many other things. And since viruses in the mind are really real, then what about to develop an antivirus that can factually, equally and factually counter-react when it comes to process informations regarding memes? And I think that will be incredibly important for this, maybe, and the future generation to develop these high-order thinking skills. So first we need data. So we have to collect the data, we have to run experiments. I'm thinking about one scholastic year program, which we can run with different high schools, also in different territories, because obviously the culture influences greatly. And then after 1 year, we have sufficient data to see if we can go on with something even bigger than this. So this is mainly what the project is all about.
And according to your experience so far, does it actually really work for most of the people, the antivirus? I mean, can they really learn critical thinking? Can they really learn how to recognize that they are accepting certain package of ideas, you know, without realizing that? So can you actually make them more aware of what they are doing?
Okay, that's the sad part because it's very hard, and this reminds me of quite a huge study that has been performed. I can't remember now, where combined the universities, I believe including Oxford. Basically, they wanted to check. They only collected students that were and are studying critical thinking at the university. And they found out through tests or various analyses that, if I remember well, only the 10% of the students were capable to describe, at least to describe, what critical thinking actually is. Only the 10%. And only the 2% were actually critical thinkers. So we are dealing with a very problematic issue, because we have been so conditioned that is very hard to actually apply in life these things. For example, critical thinking is very important, but it is really not enough, because critical thinking is mainly about studying and learning a methodology. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that methodology is going to be applied in life, especially when it comes to deal with like irrational emotions. And yes, according to my experience, I saw that many times, unfortunately. I'm prepared to see that. But I also believe that we do not have different alternatives. Well, maybe in the future, with the onset of artificial intelligence, but it's maybe too early now to talk about that. Also, I don't quite want to enter that field, but I'm also working with that field. I think that by talking just a little bit about artificial intelligence, I think that we will be very productive to translate into algorithms meta-cognitive thinking skills and critical thinking skills, and putting this into an app that can probably help us throughout the day with our thinking, with our decision-making processes, and fundamentally with the process of refining our thinking. But we are talking about the future. But I'm trying to develop some ideas about that, how to do that.
Wow, sounds very interesting. Can I ask you a little bit from a different perspective? Because we do know that that it happens basically to most people, that once they reject one ideology, they accept another one usually. So they replace it with a different ideology, and that's what happens also with a lot of atheists, as you mentioned at the beginning. So there is a difference between someone who doesn't believe in deities because he challenged those ideologies, those beliefs, and found them false. And there is a difference between people who build on this atheism some kind of new ideology, a new social group that has to behave in a certain way, that has to do certain things in a certain way. So also the fact that the new age ideologies are so popular today, it could be due to the traditional religions becoming less and less popular and new age replacing them. So don't you think it's actually a natural thing for people to be slaves of ideologies? And it's perhaps just our natural state, which we shouldn't fight?
Well, we do not have any biological evidence to support such a claim, and therefore, without evidence, I will say no. There are many theories about the God gene, which is this gene that makes us create spiritual inventions, or like rely to faith beliefs. But I have my personal theory about the reason why natural evolution created the God gene, and this is probably because we as a species, we know that we have to die, and probably natural selection throughout the thousands of years, in order to reduce some sort of depression, because we know that, developed more like, you know, these ideas about spiritual things. But this is only my personal idea. My personal theory probably is completely biased. I don't believe that we are naturally programmed to stick to an ideology. I believe that our brain is wired in a way that creates groups, and a group is always a mimiplex, starting from the family. The first mimiplex where we grew up was our family. Now, it doesn't matter if we had a good family or a bad family. That was the first mimiplex. We have been shaped and conditioned and influenced by the family, by their beliefs, by their common sense, the sense of good, the sense of what is bad, and so on. Now, this is natural. I don't think that it's natural to create ideologies. It's only historical and anthropological. And I think that we create ideologies because we terribly want to be a part, want to feel as a part of something. Now, it's good to have ideas and about how we could live in this place or what we can do in another place. But the problem with ideology is that ideology turns people into followers. And when a person is a follower, obviously the person is occupied with psychologically with something. There cannot be a proper critical analysis if the person follows some leader, some guru, or some I don't know, mystical faith and so on. So I don't think it's natural at all. And I believe that is a serious problem. We can have historical evidence about why it's a problem. I believe that it can deteriorate our thinking skills. I believe that it can produce nothing but divisions, and therefore also personal contradictions in our own thinking, and then ideologies then become beliefs, and then we know the story. Then beliefs becomes like institutionalized and all this sort of stuff. So I don't think it's natural at all. I think I think that ideological thinking, which is memetic thinking, is the outcome of our disinterested about thinking critically. It's easier to belong to a group rather than finding out for ourselves. It's easy. By ideologies, I do not necessarily refer to the big ones. I refer as like Stalinism or communism or whatever. I also refer to the small ones. For instance, the selfies is becoming an ideology. Instagram is becoming a powerful ideological mimiplex. Because you don't quite see sadness, confusion, and depression on Instagram. You see this tribe of beautiful people and beautiful faces taking thousands of selfies, and that's pretty much what it's all about. the iPhone is a form of ideology, because nothing is wrong with the device, but when people are willing to camp for 1 week in order to buy the new iPhone, that's a religious thinking and ideological thinking. So when I talk about religious thinking, and I will explain this also at the Congress, I'm not necessarily refer to, you know, going to the church or the Hindu or worshipping Allah and all this sort of stuff. And religious thinking is about any time we follow something without analyzing the validity of the premises behind that following. That's a form of religious thinking. Meaning, we do have to follow sometimes. If I don't know how to play guitar, I have to follow some tutorial or I need a master. That's okay. But if I don't know what I can do to be happy, for example, and I follow some motivational speaker online, that's a form of religious thinking. If I have to wash my car every day because otherwise I'm afraid about what my neighbor will think, that's a form of religious thinking. So religious thinking takes place every time a person does not engage a critical analysis of the structure of what is behind that form of believing and therefore the premises.
Well, I certainly hope that you are right, that critical thinking is as natural as religious thinking, and that it's just our choice, whatever we are going to do, whichever we are going to find more appealing. It's a pity, though, that so many people actually choose, ideologies and following beliefs instead of analyzing the premises, as you said. I do hope this course which you have invented and the whole EOF project can actually make a difference in it. So we are looking forward to your visit in Poland and your speech at the Congress, and we hope to learn a bit more from you. Thank you very much for the interview, and looking forward to seeing you in Wrocław.
Okay. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.